Good morning, Olav.
Good morning.
And welcome.
Thank you.
Although it's strange that I'm welcoming you into your building.
This is our building.
Our building, good, good. One of the questions that we were thinking of in terms of ecumenical officers, we listened to your trips yesterday in your presentation. So can any of us invite you to come and see us?
Of course.
Yeah? So what would be that process?
That you send me an email.
Right.
So that Diana can start looking for dates.
They would have to be a little bit braver than they've been so far in terms of asking questions, but yeah, and I guess you have a long lead time in terms of where your diary goes. Perhaps, okay.
Depends.
Michael.
And so, when you go on a visit,
Most of our plans are at least 6 months
Yes,
ahead. But
understandable.
sometimes important things must be changed.
Yeah. Yeah.
so when you go on a visit to a member church, what do you typically do, or is there such a thing as a typical visit?
I want it to be a visit to the church, not only to the church leaders, but also to the church leaders. But I always ask that we can meet somehow with young people, somehow with women's groups in the church, because they often have another story and also another involvement. That we can meet with some who are involved in the diaconical work, missiological work, and I actually hope that they invite me to participate in worship and prayer and preaching, not only meetings in offices. And I hope that they organize that we have some kind of interaction with the authorities, government, whoever they are.
Perhaps moving a little bit to our discussions this morning. You were here when Uwe was speaking. Were you here when Uwe was speaking about the Accompanied Programme to the Holy Land? And I was struck by when he said that people leave that after a visit with a very balanced perspective of what's happening there. We're in Israel-Palestine Week. There's the exhibition, and I guess there's a real hunger for justice for the Palestinian people. But thinking about what you were saying yesterday about mutual accountability, how would you express that other side of the situation where perhaps from an Israeli point of view that why they might see that occupation is justified?
I think we should stop talking about balance. This has nothing to do with balance. It's about an occupier and an occupied people. But I think the EAPPI program helps the participants to understand that reality and to understand that there is a very diversified approach to this also in Israel, among the population in Israel. It's not, it's not only one opinion in Israel. But the reality about the occupation is not a balanced reality. It's a very tough reality or occupation that interferes into all dimensions of the life of the Palestinians in 50 years. And actually more, because it's a history before that as well that has affected the life of the Palestinians very detrimentally. In this, we as WCC, we shall try to listen to everybody and to understand and also speak relevantly and accurately about many dimensions of this. I think that is the way our voice and our contribution becomes stronger. But that doesn't mean that the challenge that often comes to us, you have to be more balanced, should be answered by saying, okay, we will not criticize the occupation that much.
Okay.
Because that is not our call.
So how can we, as representatives of many different churches here, so what can we bring to the table in terms of peacemaking?
I think we, as a fellowship of churches in the World Council of Churches, shall continue to address this at least along 4 lines. One is that we address it as a solidarity issue with our fellow Christian churches and Christians. They live under this reality, and that is our first entry point. Listen to them, visit them, be with them, pray with them, work with them, raise their voice, support them. Secondly, it is an advocacy issue for peace and justice, or just peace, where we have to, in all our way of addressing it, saying that we are not biased in the sense that we think peace should be for one people and not for the others. We are working for how Israelis and Palestinians can find a way to live together with justice, so that it can be also a peaceful future. But to say that there should just be peace and don't address the justice issue actually makes us partisan in the conflict in a very negative way against the Palestinians. The third issue is that this is, whether we like it or not, a conflict where religion is mixed into the conflict. It is not a religious conflict as such. I think we should be careful to not use that language, because that doesn't help. But religion is part of it, and without somehow religion and religious leaders and communities are involved, it's difficult to see how there could be a solution. Because it is, for example, it's about what shall Jerusalem be? Who shall own Jerusalem? Who shall have this as the capital, as the center of their spirituality? And if you don't relate that to Christians, Muslims and Jews, how can you find a solution? And we have to be part of this dialogue about these efforts. And fourthly, it is, and that is not fourthly in priority, but it has to be a way of witnessing, telling the story, telling the truth. And the EAPPI program is a very significant way of doing that.
Thank you.
You have a unique overview of the Council's work. Can you share with us perhaps one highlight from the past year of the Council's work?
There are many. One was one I referred to yesterday, for example, when the Ecumenical Patriarch came to visit here and made it very clear how much the WCC and its history is his agenda and the agenda of the Orthodox family, and also gave a lot of examples of how wide this involvement is. Another highlight, well, at least for me, it's always a highlight to visit our member churches and to see that it means a lot for them to be part of the World Council of Churches. So one of them was actually in Tonga, where there had been a kind of distance and kind of skepticism to the World Council of Churches for some years, and where they expressed that actually we now understand that this is really our fellowship. Another of the many highlights we have is, of course, when we can address issues together, and those who are suffering, who are those we try to speak for, say that it actually makes a difference that you do this. Some of those events we have had with our Korean friends the last year, even if they don't see the solution, they see, you don't know how much it means that you do this. For me, that's a sign of that what the WCC has been doing for many years and continue to do can make a difference.
While we're talking at the moment, are there any questions that anybody has on what we've said, or any fresh questions?
We agree that religion is not the reasons for violence in many places in the world, and also it's not the reason in Palestine. But I have read some papers that came out of the WCC recently, always accusing Christianity of every violence that happened throughout history, Christianity itself, not only Christians. So it was a little bit upsetting, these statements.
Well, if that is the case, we have to discuss how we express ourselves, because that is not the whole picture, of course, and it's a very important part of today's reality that many other religions and religious traditions at least is used to legitimize violence. And we have to see that reality face to face, in particular also in your part of the world these days, in the Middle East. I think there are 2 or 3 reasons why the World Council of Churches mention a self-critical approach to our Christian history when issues like this comes up. One is to say we realize that Christianity and Christendom has been part of the power structure and power games in the world. I mean, the colonial history combined with the mission history, it's a difficult part of our Christian history, and we should not say that's not true. It is true, but another dimension of this is, I mean, also we have a very difficult history in our relationship to the Jews and the history of the Jews, where Christianity also was used as a legitimization of a genocide, and there are examples like this that are not far from us. But I agree with you that when we speak about these issues today, we also have to speak openly about how other religions are used now to make Christians a target for violence. And we try to find the language for that and the way to do that without making it even worse for some of our Christian sisters and brothers, and make the conflict more dense and more tough. And this is something you can also help us to both to reflect, but also to see how can we do this in a way that is really supporting our Christian sisters and brothers suffering today.
Olav, thank you so much for making the time to be with us today, and thank you so much for your work with the Council, and please let us thank Olav.
Thank you.